Okay, I want to welcome everybody who's joining us today on the Zoom or on Facebook for our virtual town hall today, organized by the Tahoe Chamber and sponsored in part by El Dorado County, a great partner with us. We have some outstanding, knowledgeable guests today to talk a little bit about the Small Business Administration Office of Disaster Assistance program for those who have been impacted by the Caldor Fire. And our specialist today will talk to you about who's eligible, what are the criteria, what are the parameters of the program, so that you know if you meet any of those criteria, what you need to do to apply for some assistance. Before I introduce our guests, I want to introduce Mike Glover, who's the new CEO of Tahoe Chamber. Welcome, Mike. Mike was previously at Tahoe some years back. I think started his career or early in his career, worked at Heavenly, and later on worked in Incline Village, Crystal Bay for the Visitors Bureau there. And for the last number of years has been working up in Oregon for the Hood River Chamber and also for some destination marketing organizations up there in the Hood River, which, as you know, is the northern part of Oregon along the river border with Washington State. So we're very pleased to have Mike back at Tahoe and welcome him as our CEO. And you'll be hearing more and getting to know Mike as we move forward. Our guest today to help us with this important topic, I want to introduce first Jessica Carr. Jessica is the recently promoted to head the Sierra Small Business Development Program, again based in Truckee at the Office of the Sierra Business Council. Jessica has worked with us many times on many programs with Tahoe Chamber. They've been running our business coaching program and really were extremely helpful in doing a number of town halls when we were helping people with their EIDL applications and their paycheck protection program applications, and just a really knowledgeable group under Jessica's leadership at Sierra Business Council and the Sierra SBDC. Also with us today is Leslie Williams, who's the Associate Director at Sierra SBDC. And we welcome Leslie. She's also been extraordinarily helpful in some of our town halls in the past. And also with us today, Kathy Halbardier. So Kathy is, of course, no stranger to our town hall programs and working with the Chamber on a number of issues, wearing various hats from both the Nevada side and the California side. So want to welcome all of you and get started with the program. And to do that, I will invite Jessica to kick us off.
Thank you, Steve. I am Jessica Carr, the director of the Sierra Small Business Development Center, hosted by Sierra Business Council. I am in Truckee. That's where my main office is, world headquarters, but we do cover all of El Dorado County, Placer County, Nevada County, Lassen, Plumas, Sierra, and Modoc County as well. So we have a large geographic region, and the main gist of what we do is one-on-one business advising. We are a program of the SBA, the Small Business Administration, so we work closely with them to help businesses with their programs, like the disaster recovery programs for COVID and other disasters like wildfire. But a lot of other advising happens in our center too. We have about 15 advisors on staff right now who have different areas of expertise. They help with marketing, cash flow, financing, succession planning, pretty much anything you can think of. And they're all wonderful. I have some favorites who are on with us today, Kathy and Leslie, and I'm going to hand it over to the two of them to discuss our Caldor Fire business recovery assistance that we have available. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And there will be time for Q&A with our presenters after the presentation. So if you have questions, make sure to put them in the Q&A box when that time comes around. So, ladies.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leslie Williams. I'm the Associate Director of Sierra Small Business Development Center. And I've lived in Truckee for 40 years. I got my banking start at Truckee River Bank, if anybody remembers. And it's now Bank of the West. I thought so. I said that for you, Steve. Right. But this is really rewarding to be working at the Sierra Small Business Development Center, where I can discuss all things small business related, whereas at the bank, you really couldn't. You were looking for applications, cross-selling other products. So it's just been a treat. And then to be able to work for Jess Carr is amazing. And Kathy came on board like a year ago, I think, or close to. So we're extremely happy and lucky to have Kathy working on the California borders for us. I'm going to let her take it away and look forward to sharing all this information with you and then question and answers at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Again, my name is Kathy Halbadier, and I have known Steve in the Tahoe Chamber for, probably since about 1995, working very closely for both Nevada and California SPDC. So small business is near and dear to my heart. So I'm real excited to be able to talk to you about what we have in the program, and maybe we could show the slides. It took a while for the declaration to come through, but we're thrilled that we have the declaration and we're able to go forward with trying to assist business owners with this type of coverage for in assistance. And so it's been very valuable in other disaster areas. So I think we're probably 3 slides in right now. Perfect. Yes, one of the things, if we can go down one more, we just wanted to talk about some of the initial things and to try and get everybody's head wrapped around what is necessary to show and to talk about your recovery as you come out of the disaster that happened up there with the Caldor Fire. One of the things, and some of these things are preliminary to, we'll go into what the declaration says, but one of the things that is just a requirement for the SBA, and is one of the initial things that they're going to ask for, is to make sure that you've talked to your insurance agent. One of the things is that they want to know is, have you looked to see what your insurance might cover you for, whether it's business interruption or any other type of disaster coverage that you've had. One of the things, as everything small business that we talk about, is it's also a good time to look at the policy and say, oh, gee, if I don't have it, maybe I better look at what things I should be adding to my policy for the future planning. So insurance agents can be a very close partner with you in helping. They will require that you have documentation about your policy, about whether you have that coverage and who your agent is as a part of that. We'll also talk about financing as a part of how you show what the injury was. And then we're looking at a lot of things with the IRS in terms of helping with how you go forward with your filings this year based on the coverage, the loss, and what you might be getting in terms of coverage from the SBA. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And then what we're doing is we're starting off with what the actual declaration was. And that declaration came down about mid-December. And what it's really looking at is that the occurring time frame that they're looking, that they want to know what the injury was, is from the August 14th to October 21st timeframe. So that's really what we're looking at and what we'll base our data on when we're showing what our loss was. Some key timelines to keep in mind are, if you had physical property damage, that deadline is right around the corner. So contact us immediately. If you have not done anything to get that type of assistance from the SBA, if there was actual physical damage, loss of a building, loss of equipment, any of those kinds of things, that deadline is February 7th. So you want to make sure that you meet that criteria by February 7th, that you get your application going. Under the economic injury, and that's where we're looking at loss. And the next slide we'll talk more about it, but we have a longer time frame to look at showing what that injury was. So we have until September 12th of 2022. What I am finding is that the process is not a quick process, a quick turnaround, I guess is what the words I'm looking for. An example is I just worked on one where we actually applied in mid-September and we just got the approval letter this week. So again, it depends on the complexity of the business and how much prepared we are when we submit the application. So we want to make sure that you get on it sooner rather than later, especially while it's fresh in your mind as to the nature of what your economic injury or your economic loss was. Next slide, please. So here's the areas where they cover the type of injury. So what we're looking at with the physical damage. And that's where we're looking at property, inventory, equipment. We had one where the equipment was because of the power surges and it blew the compressor on a piece of equipment. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at with the physical property damage. And again, that timeline is right around the corner. Under the economic injury, that's where we're looking at the working capital. We're looking at loss of business. Maybe you were an outdoor business and people weren't coming because of the air quality, road closures, then the evacuation. So all of those caused an economic injury. There was a loss of the business, the potential that you would have. What they do is they look at historically what you would have done during that time frame to see what the injury was. And then, of course, there is the home disaster loans, but we're going to be focusing primarily on the physical and the economic injury. So if we could go to the next slide, please. What they're going to be looking at is the credit requirements. Now, it's key in this one to look at how creative they have been. They're going to be looking at your credit history. They're also going to be looking at your ability to repay the loan. Collateral has become a discussion point. If it's under $25,000, they do not require collateral. In the instance where my individual that I was just talking about with the $500,000, what they're going to be able to do so that he can have an economic input injection right away is they're going to give him the initial $25,000 uncollateralized, and then we have time to perfect the collateral for him to get the remaining balance of $475. That's important from a cash flow point of view for this particular business. And if it's under 25, again, there's not a collateral requirement. Over 25, there is a collateral requirement. So we can have that conversation before we even apply to see what the need is and what would be the eligible collateral. So next slide, please. This is what we're talking about in terms of the interest rates on these. I was looking at a loan for a business startup and it's over 8%. So if there's been an injury, these loans are very beneficial to the applicant because of the interest rate and the terms. What we're seeing in terms of the structure of the loan is that they are deferring the first payment for 18 months. Under the business loans, they're offering a rate of 2.85, and they're terming it anywhere from 15 to 30 years. My particular applicant under the 500,000 got the 2.85 rate and it got a 15-year repayment with an 18-month deferment. That's a great injection of capital for the loss of business that he had over the period of time that he was impacted by the fire. So again, want to draw your attention to the availability of the low terms on the interest rates. Next slide, please. Again, the loan terms are a maximum of 30 years, as I talked to you about, and it's a maximum of $2 million. What they're really looking at, and we'll get a little more into the documentation, but what we're looking at is what was the loss. And when I get into some of the forms, we'll show you. But again, a lot of it goes back to where you were in 2019. I don't know if this is the best way to word it, but that was the last sense of normalcy that we had, that there wasn't a pandemic, a fire, or other disasters going on that impacted your ability to do business and in a normal environment. So we like to look at your numbers on a monthly basis over that 3-year period. So again, that's something that we can delve a little more into. But I think the key here is that it goes up to a maximum of 30 years and a maximum of $2 million. Again, it's based on what we can prove was the economic injury. Next slide, please. And Leslie, feel free to jump in anytime. So again, this is a little more on the disaster loan. It's talking about the maximum amount and that it is based on what the economic injury is, and that's the loss of business. They also want to know that you have not had assistance anywhere else. And again, that's why one of the first calls that we tell our clients is make sure that you've checked with your insurance agent. Copy of the policy, a statement from the insurance agent. If you've received any relief from your insurance, they'll want to see a copy of the what they paid you for, what they reimbursed you for, and the check that you received for any coverage that came through your insurance agency. So again, first call that you want to make is with that insurance company to make sure you know that what options you have through that particular relief. Some of the sectors that we've seen that were hard hit were the retail and a lot of this gift and novelty shops. I had a fly fishing business or the store in the Dixie Fire area where he lost a lot during COVID. And then he had a second injury when the entire lake was surrounded by fire. There was nobody that was coming to do any type of fishing on Lake Almanor. So that business, he significantly had about a good 3-month period of loss of revenue. So that's really what we were looking at for his economic injury. Had a lot of resorts and talking to probably a lot of our audience, because that's a lot of the businesses up in the Tahoe Basin, just like they were in the Lake Almanor area where I've done some work and seen a lot of the injuries there. Again, the resource tools that we're looking at, as Jess said, we are the one-on-one counseling. So we like to work right directly with you and look at what all we can find in terms of resources out there. But as I said, one of the keys is making sure you're talking with your insurance agent. And another one, again, I'll go back to my gentleman that had just got approved for the $500,000. We worked very closely with his lender to let him know that we were going through this process, that we're on track for an approval. We don't know how much or when. And he was able to get some credit extensions, some increases on some lines of credit that he had, so that he could stay positive with his vendors in terms of payments, and he didn't get on demand of cash only terms or negatively affect his relationships with any of his vendors, knowing that once the loan was approved, they would pay down those lines and go back to what his credit extension should have been. So again, your banker can be a very key person in this relationship. And again, we let the lender know that we were in this process and that we were tracking for approval, and that helped give the lender the confidence to work with him to give him those credit extensions. So a lot of people out there can be resources too. You might not necessarily think of them first of mind, but we want to make sure that you're thinking that way and that we can work with you in that area. Next slide, please. This is the area that we want to make sure that we prep you for when you go to apply. When we did the initial EIDLs for COVID, it was a pretty easy application on the front end. You'd really just showed that what type of business you were and that you were forced into a closure and that you had no sales. So it was pretty easy. What we're requiring under these disaster loans is supplemental documentation. What I'm showing here is some of the documents, well, I shouldn't say some of them. These are going to be the minimal required documents when you go online to complete the application. You'll do the application, and then they'll go and they'll ask you for, one of the keys is the monthly sales figure worksheet. It's 2019, 2020, and 2021, and you want to look at it month by month, because again, we're looking at the disaster coverage period is August 14th through October 21st. So how do your August, September, and October numbers look given the fire disaster of 2021 in comparison to where you would have been in 2019? So again, it's really important to do this worksheet. We have it available to send out to you and assist you in pulling it together. Then we have the request for transcript for your tax returns. And I know it kind of seems crazy, but you're uploading your tax returns, but they're also going to request transcripts from the IRS. Want to know that we're looking at like documents. So that's a pretty simple form to complete. Then there's your schedule of liabilities and personal financial statement. And again, these are SBA forms that we can provide for you. What they're looking at is what is your obligation? And just going back to my gentleman that got the $500,000, he had vendors that he had payment due, obligation due to, and this helped us look at how was he able to manage those vendors, and that was helped to determine how much he needed in order to recover from this disaster. And again, 2019 and 20 tax returns, plus a current P&L for 2021. So those are absolutely necessary in order for you to complete the application and have the SBA know that you're an applicant for these disaster funds. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. Got ahead of me. You can apply right online. The link is right there. You will set up your identification. And this is another, they do a two-part identification verification. So I will tell you, make sure you have a copy of your driver's license front and back saved down to your computer. It's their way of doing that authentication that I'm Kathy Halberdier, I say I'm Kathy Halberdier, I create the account, and then I upload my driver's license and they know I am Kathy Halberdier. So be prepared for that, have that information stored on your computer. And again, the 800 number is there. They've been very responsive. I actually had, in the very beginnings of some of this disaster funding, you were told that you have an 8-hour wait. I had a 2-minute wait the other day. So they are moving forward in trying to be very responsive, especially because we have timelines associated with these applications. So they are being very responsive. So that's very encouraging for going through this application process. Next slide, please. Again, these are some of the other sources that we are looking at or wanting to introduce you to see if there's any other funding out there. I was actually talking to a client that just initiated a crowdfunding and one of their friends saw it and made a contribution. But there's the Resilience Fund, the California Rebuilding Fund. Whether you qualify and how you apply, that'll be subject to doing a little more of a deeper dive. But these are some of the other areas that we are seeing come available for at least talking to for some options on alternative sources for you. Next slide, please. And again, just reiterating that we are free and confidential and we provide one-on-one servicing, and we really like to dive down to see what your need is and get a little deeper into how we might be able to help you. And Leslie, anything you want to add before we open it up to questions?
No, I think that was great. I just wanted to re-clarify because I know it's confusing with all the acronyms, but the SBDC network is funded in part, and I know Jess said this, by the Small Business Administration. But so we're your boots on the ground. We have no access to your applications. We have no access to any of the loan officers, really. I mean, we might be able to get into discussion with the loan officer if you were to approve it, whether it was a lender or the Small Office of Disaster Assistance, but we're really a resource for you. I just wanted to clarify that because we were saying we and they a lot. So they is the Office of Disaster Assistance. We is the Sierra Small Business Development Center as your resource.
Thank you.
Great job, Kathy. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kathy and team. It's a lot of information. I know it comes across as sounding like a pretty bureaucratic process, but I think that's one of the values of having the Sierra Small Business Development Center available. They can help walk you through what you need to do. And as Kathy said several times, to emphasize the importance of it, reach out to your insurance agent. But we'll have this information available, rebroadcast this program several times because there was a lot in the PowerPoint slides there in terms of things that you need to do, the steps that you need to have. So I think it's good to prepare before you would reach out to one of the team members at SBDC for some help, so that you have a little orientation around call your insurance agent, get the basic documentation ready, things of that nature, so that and I guess we focused appropriately so because this is the chamber on businesses. I was trying to think that probably principally businesses in the Tahoe area, since very fortunately there weren't homes damaged or things of that nature. But I was trying to think through, Kathy, if there was any sort of residential pieces of this, understanding that most of the residential impacts were really on the West Slope side, but I couldn't really think of a residential issue here. But maybe if somebody had a home office or something like that, I don't know if that falls under business, or residence that may be business? What do you think? Yep, you're muted, Kathy.
Thank you. Sorry. I think that that's one that we can look at, because it's sometimes when you have a home-based office, is it office, is it business, or is it home? So that's the one that we can talk about, but there is definitely was, there's a long-term recovery group that I've been participating in, and there has definitely been the arm out there that's been helping with people that did have significant damage to their home. So that is another whole program that I didn't really talk much about. There are resources through the long-term recovery group that can help those. I believe our expertise is more on the side of, and Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong, but more on this side of the business loans and especially the economic injury. Right. That's really the area that we've seen a lot of assistance with business owners.
Right. And could you repeat the dates? The declaration of emergency for the Caldor Fire had a specific date range that I want to make sure we emphasize for people.
And it's August 14th through October 21st.
And then
go ahead. And I did want to mention too that there is the long-term recovery group. So if anybody's interested in that component as well, they can feel free to give me a call. And they're doing some work in terms of both business and individual and homeowner for assistance with anybody that has been affected by the Caldor Fire.
So obviously the August 14th through October 21st date range includes the time that the entire South Shore was evacuated. So if I'm a business and I was closed, obviously, during the time of the evacuation order, and I wasn't able to open, I had no revenue, that is an economic injury. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So if I understood correctly, based on what they would have done during the same time period, going back to 2019, pre-pandemic, what would you have generated at your business during that time, and what you generated during that same time now, which in part was zero, that is an economic injury that you can apply for some assistance.
That's the way we've seen the formula work, or at least the formula in the disaster loans that I've worked on. It's been very important to know the monthly numbers, and especially, again, going back to 2019, we didn't have these impacts to our ability to conduct our business. Whether I'll go back to my fly fishing guy, people were coming to tow and they were taking vacations and they were doing those normal activities. They were impacted in 2020, and then they were impacted again in 2021. So they really look at those numbers to see if you would have done 5,000 a month in August and 5,000 in September and 5,000 in October, and you had months where you didn't have any money coming in because you were closed or evacuated. That's what they're looking at in terms of the economic injury. They call it economic injury. It's a loss of revenue.
Loss of revenue, right. So I would think for the South Shore, that would be a principal reason for why the businesses would be eligible for the program. Talk to us a little bit more about, so it's a loan, and talk a little bit more detail about, the payback and the interest rate. And, some people I know are still nervous about taking on loans because of the uncertain nature of some of the economics. What about the loan interest rates and that part of the program?
I think that for me, that's one of the key parts of it, because if you're having cash flow problems because you've had loss of income, then it's going to be very difficult to handle a loan of 8%. That's where what they've structured in these terms of the loan interest rate and payback period. The interest rate is at 2.85. So that's low interest rate money. Mm-hmm. What we're seeing is a deferment of 18 months so that they can recover from the disaster and start to build their business back before they get hit with the payment. And then they have, depending upon the amount that they borrow, they can have up to 30 years to pay that payment back. And an example is on some of them I saw with the COVID, they got maybe 24,000 with $110 payment that they didn't have to start paying for 18 months. Now that's something that is more manageable than a 8% interest rate on a payment of that amount. So again, they're looking at, I think the goal is to rebuild the business.
Right.
And that's what I think is good about, I have suffered a loss. So how can I have time to rebuild my business and have it be affordable, that once I do have to make that payment, it's not going to be something that I'm not going to be able to cash flow.
Right.
And that's the beauty. I think one of the things that I learned by going to one of the recovery centers, one of the ones that initially opened after the fire, was one of the things that the SBA encouraged was get your ducks in a row, make sure you know what your loss was, but there's no cost to apply. And you don't have to take the loan. You can talk to your business officer, loan officer that is going to work with you once you're approved to determine, wow, I don't know if I want that much. I really need X. So again, you don't have to take it and there's no cost to apply. This gives you the option to make that decision. How is business coming back? Is it coming back strong? Do I need it? Should I take it as an abundance of caution? Because there is no prepayment penalty. So you can pay it off early if business comes back. So because of all those options, it seems like I want to make this available to myself to know I'm making an informed business decision.
And they can say you're eligible for X, but you could say, I really only need Y of that. Is that? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Leslie, you put some information in the chat, which I think is worth.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, if we could just back up, because we're in the heat of the moment.
Yep.
But the Office of Disaster Assistance has been around since I think the 60s, and currently, from what I understand, there are 26 federally declared disasters across the nation. So it's the same office that works on every disaster. Like Colorado just had fires,
Right.
the Midwest just had floods. The East Coast had hurricanes. So these are all, if it's federally declared, then the staff at the Office of Disaster Assistance gets moved around. So that's what people might have noticed, being frustrated. They call, they get different answers, they have a different loan officer. They're shifting this staff everywhere, and they're hiring and hiring and hiring to answer this 800 telephone number. And the level of expertise is different with every person that answers. So anyway, the basics of the use of the proceeds, to piggyback on what Kathy was saying, I have a lot of clients that were approved for COVID title, and they didn't take it. And that's great. But we're here saying, don't sit on the sidelines and not apply, but make sure you're going to want to use it for the eligible proceeds. I'm afraid there's going to be an awful lot of fraudulent activity that's already been underway, because people did recover, they had the COVID money, they didn't give it back, and then they expanded their business, or they bought a building or something, and that's not what it's for. It's for the economic injury, it's for the recovery from the declared disaster. So if you don't think you can use it for working capital, to, like I put in the chat there, for the regular payments, operating expenses, anything in the ordinary course of business. So it's not for expansion. Like I had one gal that applied, got an EIDL loan, and she was going to open a second restaurant location. That's not what this money's for. But not everybody knows that. So they're thinking, well, I'm good, I recovered, I'm good. Well, then pay back the money. I mean, I don't know how the government's going to audit these trillions of loans, but somebody's going to get audited. So the other piece to this is, if you do take it, you qualify and you do take it, we're recommending maybe thinking about opening this additional bank account and just keep the funds there and have everything run through there. So you have really clean accounting. It's difficult a year later to go backwards and go, oh my God, it's all 6 1 half does the other. Well, not when it comes to an audit. You have to be able to show that you used it for these eligible uses.
And I recall that was the wisdom that was imparted with regard to PPP and the EIDL disaster loans. Open up a separate account or have a separate tracking so it's clean. And we worked with Kathy on the Chamber's PPP application, and she really was rigorous in terms of making sure that we kept the records separate from everything else, so that when it came time to show that, we met the criteria and it could be transferred from a loan to an actual grant, we passed that with flying colors, because we had done it with Kathy's guidance from the beginning in the way that people should do this kind of program. And you had in the chat, Leslie, you said, operating expenses, payroll, rent, mortgage, utilities, other ordinary business expenses, those kinds of things. And you also listed there in the PowerPoint, Resilience Tahoe. And if somebody does want to expand their business, open up a second operation, that particular program is something that they could apply to for those purposes, right? And that's something that I know you had started in the Truckee area, and then we worked with you to expand it to the greater South Shore of the lake. And maybe it would be worth a minute just talking a little bit about that program, because somebody says, well, I do want to expand my business. Yes, I suffered a loss, but I really want to expand. Well, obviously the disaster assistance is not the right mechanism, but this other program may be. Can you talk just a little bit about that?
Sure. This was a philanthropic idea that started in the Truckee Tahoe Airport District footprint. So we called it Resilience Fund Sierra.
Right.
And was self-funded. There were donations made, and the lending. So Sierra Small Business Development Center at Sierra Business Council is actually the underwriter for that, and has the application. So a small business can apply, and the original parameters were the recovery, the COVID. So I'm not sure if the actual verbiage in the template itself has changed to include recovery, but I think everybody's agreeable to that because there is money available. So the new, the second expansion of the Resilience Fund was Tahoe, again, philanthropic funding, local organizations, some county money, some private money, and an applicant can apply. I think it's up to $25,000 and 5-year repayment, I think at 2%. I might be off, but it's resiliencepfund.org. All the application information is there. The eligibility is there. And it's another great product to help. Like you said, I don't know that we use the proceeds now there in for expansion, but certainly for recovery, I think everybody's feeling that way. So I think we have to update the application a little bit to include.
That's a good point. And Jessica concurs.
Oh, there's Jess. Yeah.
25,000.
Yeah.
And,
thanks, Jess. Yeah.
And you're
so we did fund quite a few in that first go around. So that was.
I know in the beginning, some of it was almost pre-COVID, but it was as COVID was starting. Some people decided that they wanted to change the configuration of their business, expand it, to deal with COVID social distancing or whatever those things were. And that this program was very good for those kinds of things. People that needed some working capital to make those kinds of infrastructure adjustments to their place of business. So, and there is a website for that program, which I'm trying to remember, but I'm sure.
Jess put it in the chat. It's resiliencepfund.org.
There it is, resiliencepfund.org. And
it is quick. The nice thing about it from lending, being an ex-banker, it's a fast process. But same thing, you have to put all your information in. If we have to go back and say, where's this, where's that, where's this? But it's a local loan committee, and the money flows through quickly. So that's another good option.
Kathy mentioned that your team is available at no cost to help people walk through, whether it's that process or the small business development assistance for the disaster assistance loan program, because sometimes I have to pay money to have somebody help walk me through this. But it's really a great service that you provide, and again, we have enjoyed working with you all over the years on the business coaching side of your operation, where it's somebody contacts you, we help market that service. Somebody contacts you and say, I need to update my marketing plan. And so a lot of people are changing their marketing strategies these days because of COVID or a variety of reasons. And so you have people on your team who are marketing specialists, or people who can advise a business owner on, maybe ways to improve the efficiency of their accounting systems, or, so whatever it is, there's a wide variety of services and expertise that you have. And I know several of your coaches, and they really are outstanding. And again, people can get this advice. It's free, and of course they need to take steps to do what you advise them to do. But it's a really great program. So, and I see that it's sierrasbdc.com, and you can make an application online to sign up for services, get a counselor assigned to you based on the issue or the challenge that you're facing. And also, Leslie, you put in the chat that nonprofits can access SCORE, and what is it, Cal nonprofits. If there's a nonprofit that needs assistance, there's a separate program for them. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, the SBDC network is funded in part by the Small Business Administration that does not lend to nonprofit organizations. Right. But our fellow agency SCORE, Service Corps of Retired Executives, is a great organization. And Cal Nonprofits has, I believe, no-cost services, and they've been so instrumental in helping all the nonprofits through this, because everybody was eligible for most of these grant fundings, including the California Relief Grant.
Yeah, because I know your office has worked with a lot of the California-specific programs as well. I guess that there has been so many different programs that have come out, and some of them have very short deadlines and turnaround times. And I marvel at your staff's ability to pivot and deal with a whole bunch of different programs, whether it be state. I know Kathy's dealt with the programs in Nevada, and of course the federal program. So it's been like a real whirlwind. We appreciate the government's wanting to get money out to people, but of course a lot of the businesses that are members of the chamber and within your service territory are small, family operations, and it's hard for them to navigate some of these programs. They don't necessarily have a full-time accounting person on staff or an outside accountant to help them. So again, the services you provide are extremely valuable. Mike, I'm not sure if you had any questions for the team here today.
No, but I can make a quick comment. We worked closely with the local SBDC in the Gorge when we were impacted by the fires that closed 84. And obviously there was a pretty severe economic impact on that, especially to tourism related businesses, because our primary audience for that area is from Portland, and Interstate 84 is the main artery. So when that was closed, there was a severe impact, and our local SBDC really helped a lot of our local businesses access those SBA. Well, first off, they were instrumental in getting the SBA and getting the disaster declaration, which freed up the funds from the SBA. And I know a couple of businesses that were severely impacted by that closure accessed those loans, and those loans were instrumental in them being able to survive and recover strongly, and actually did, because they had the capital in place, were able to rebound and come back stronger 2 years later.
Right. No, it's a great story. And as was mentioned, right now that seems to be there's a disaster in virtually every part of the country. So I can imagine that, SBA and Office of Disaster Assistance are probably almost overwhelmed with all the things. And seen this Winter Storm Izzy back east, and horrendous flooding in parts of the country, and hurricanes, and it's just amazing. This is becoming more a part of our life, and what businesses have to deal with in terms of surviving and sustaining and trying to grow, and of course the hiring challenges that everybody faces. So we really appreciate having access to a Sierra Small Business Development Center. Again, as has been said, part of their funding comes from SBA because they like to have people in the field who know the territory, who can understand the nature of the business in that region, like Mike was describing up in Oregon, again, a tourism related situation. So I think, we deal with businesses every day, and and our members. And, we've heard more stories of anguish and stress and just, running a small business or running any business is really a particular challenge. And it's great to know that resources are available both at the chamber and through our partnerships with organizations like SBDC. And so, and I want to put out there that, Mike knew with the chamber team, but not unfamiliar with these challenges. And it's mike@tahoechamber.org if you want to reach out to him, if you want to welcome him or share any story. And then, we can always point you to the resources that are available. I know we're in touch with our partners in El Dorado County. There is some money that they're making available from their American Rescue Plan Act funds for nonprofits, including in the El Dorado part of the South Shore of Lake Tahoe, because we know nonprofits have been severely impacted through all of this. Many organizations, including our own, we couldn't do the fundraisers. We couldn't do the gatherings of folks that typically have been a large part of our revenue generating opportunities so we can sustain our services. And so we're going to be coming out soon with information from El Dorado County on how eligible nonprofits in the Tahoe portion of El Dorado County can apply for some assistance from the county, from their American Rescue Plan Act. So I want to see if there's any additional questions from anybody who's with us before we conclude the program. And again, we'll rebroadcast this on multiple channels, make sure that people have access to the information. And Jess, anything that you want to add from the standpoint of your team at SBDC?
I put this in the chat, but I just really appreciate Tahoe Chamber's partnership in allowing us to let people know that we're here to help. We, struggle to ensure that folks are aware that we exist. And so we really appreciate the ability to come on and talk about our services and the wonderful resources that we have available to help businesses. So thank you.
Right. And, it's a great, a great extension of the folks like at SBDC who can help, again, the SBA at the local level be the boots on the ground here, because we know that some of these agencies at the state and federal level are really constrained in terms of what they can do. So it's great having the local resource for more like, talking with your neighbors and getting somebody that understands the nature of your business and the area in which you are doing business. So again, I want to thank Jessica Carr, who's the director of the Sierra Small Business Development Center, Leslie Williams, the associate director, and Kathy, longtime friend, Albadier, and now working with both SBDC on the California side, as well as continuing her work on the Nevada side. So she's multilingual in terms of being able to deal with both states, which is really important because we are a bi-state chamber of commerce. So we have members that operate in each of the two states. And again, welcome to Mike Glover, our new CEO. And we'll be back again soon with additional town hall programs. There never seems to be a lack of important topics that we want to share with our members in the community. So thank you all again very much. And thanks again for your great work. We'll talk again soon. Bye for now.